Obsidian's take on the Fallout franchise, Fallout New Vegas, is an amazing game from a general gameplay and role-playing perspective. The player gets to choose who they are. Your choices have impact. There are multiple ways to solve quests. There is no true correct option. The game is filled with many unique items that add more flavor, and the characters are well written. Also, this video will cover some story elements and quests from the game, so obligatory spoiler warning. One important aspect of any role-playing game is that the player needs to be able to assume the role of their character. Fallout New Vegas makes this very easy, as your character's given backstory is purposefully kept vague. The only constants of your character is that you were a courier working for the Mojave Express delivery service. That is all that is known. The rest is up for you to decide. Your motivations, ideals, backstory, interests, and skills are all up to you, the player, to decide. This is especially compounded by the interactions you can have with Benny, the person who shot you and stole your package. The player has many different options to deal with Benny, from killing him, to seducing him, to conspiring with his plans. Additionally, the player has multiple methods to carry out those actions, from a direct confrontation at the tops, convincing to be with Benny alone, or by getting Caesar to capture him. The important thing is that at no point is the courier forced to do something. It is all up to the player. An important part of allowing player choice is that the player sees consequences, whether good or bad, for their actions. Fallout New Vegas does this extremely well. Have you killed members of a faction for no reason in particular? You'll lose reputation. Do an action that benefits a faction? You'll gain reputation. This leads to the player having to decide who they'll help or harm. Yet another complexity in player choice. Additionally, these consequences have gameplay impact. Is your reputation too low with any particular faction? They'll attack you on sight. If it's one of the 4 major factions, such as Caesar's Legion or the NCR, they'll send assassins after you. These consequences require the player really think about their actions and how they will benefit or hurt them in the future. Another aspect of player choice and roleplay ability is that you are able to complete quests in multiple ways. Each outcome gives its own benefits and drawbacks, and it's up to the player to decide what's best for the Mojave. For example, the player can choose multiple times in quests whether to solve things violently or diplomatically, or whether to favor one faction over another. An example is the 2 conflicting quests, Run Good Springs Run and Ghost Town Gunfight. Both involve the Powder Gangers' attack on the starting town of Good Springs. The player must choose which side to back, but can't take both sides. Another example is the quest at Helios 1, That Lucky Old Sun. In this quest, the player has many different ways to route the power to the Mojave, whether to some or all areas, choosing personal gain or destroying the plant's power generators. One final example is in many companion quests, which normally have multiple ways to solve them, each ending giving a different bonus or perk to the companion or player when they have the companion. One important part of any game that allows for choices is that no choice is the correct choice. This is seen well in Fallout New Vegas, as the 4 main factions that the player has to choose from to pick to lead for the second Battle of Hoover Dam drastically differ. Each has its own set of ideals, goals, and rules. Each has their own outlook of the Mojave Wasteland. However, no one faction is completely perfect nor evil. The NCR appeals to traditional values of democracy and gives its citizens many rights. However, their expansionist practices often undermine what the locals want, and often receive the short end of the stick. Caesar's Legion is an authoritative dictatorship where the citizens get few, if any, rights. Its absolute authority makes sure any inefficiency is at a minimum, and annexed tribes are forced into the Legion, whether they like it or not. Slavery is prevalent, and women are treated as lesser beings. Mr. House is also an authoritative faction, but restricts the rights of its citizens little, instead focusing on technological progress, Mr. House being cold and calculated, eliminating conspirators immediately, but opting for democracy when possible. Yes Man is much more anarchy, opting for vague rules, but making sure that people follow some semblance of order. Yes Man also allows for much more freedom with its citizens and its basic ideals, as the Courier chooses which factions get to survive and which die, the Courier directly telling Yes Man what goes and what doesn't. Therefore, it's hard to say truly how living under the rule of Yes Man would be. Scattered throughout the game are unique items such as weapons, armor, and other gear. For example, some quests offer unique items as a reward for completing them a certain way. This is seen with Euclid's Sea Finder and Orbital Strike. It is usable once per day and can only be bought from Max and Freeside. Additionally, in order to be used, it requires you divert power to Archimedes 2 in the quest That Lucky Old Sun. Weapons like these operate completely differently from any other weapon and are rare. However, some weapons are simply variants of normal weapons and differ aesthetically and have stat differences. This is seen with a weapon such as the Mysterious Magnum, which is a standard 44 Magnum revolver except it does more damage, has a unique look, and plays the same guitar riff as the Mysterious Stranger whenever the weapon is holstered or drawn. It can be gotten by passing a barter check during the quest Talent Pool. Weapons like these are much more common, but are still rare enough to feel like a reward when you get a new one, and adds a much needed refresher to the dime a dozen standard weapons. Another role-playing concept executed well is the characters. The characters feel extremely well fleshed out with their own personalities. Each faction leader has their own personalities, Caesar being impatient and expecting only perfection from the Courier. Mr. House is patient, willing to explain his arguments and plan, but is annoyed by uncalculated inconveniences that may arise. The various superiors at the NCR are vastly different in their personalities, some being stubborn and uptight, others are patient and optimistic, and others are dejected and have lost all faith in the system. These varying personalities paint a picture of the inner workings of the NCR. A perfect example of show, don't tell. Yes Man too has a personality. Though cooperating with the Courier's actions normally, there is an air of sarcasm and annoyance with some reactions, such as if the player decides to blow up the Securitron army at the fort. This shows that Yes Man does not always have to comply 100% of the time, but also has his own set of goals that are mostly subverted. The humanoid companions, too, are quite deep, the player learning about the character's backstory and thoughts over the time they travel with them, and if needed, the personal quests they offer. The game is only held back by the amount of bugs and crashes that the game has. While slightly buggier than a usual Bethesda game, most of the blame has to do with the game's stupidly short development time of only 18 months, 1.5 years. Once again, with any game published by Bethesda, the community has to pick up the slack to fix the bugs, and that's how we have the unofficial patch for Fallout New Vegas. In summary, Fallout New Vegas is a great first-person RPG for many reasons, including but not limited to extensive player choice, player consequences, the lack of a correct option, multiple gameplay styles, unique items, and a well-written story and characters. The game is held back by only its bugginess, so please, Bethesda, get Obsidian to make another Fallout game. I would strongly recommend this game to anybody, especially if they enjoy RPG and open world games. Obsidian really hit the nail on the head here. Good job! As of recording, Fallout New Vegas has the highest rating on Steam compared to all the other Fallout games.